Tax raids on the BBC, or what the income tax is calling an income tax survey, have entered their second day. It's led to a furious debate at home and abroad because it comes, well, just a couple of weeks after a BBC documentary was described as anti India and blocked from being shared online. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Our big focus today is on the tax raids that have entered their second day when it comes to the British Broadcasting Corporation. The income tax has officially described this to be a survey. They have accused the BBC of several violations, including tax evasion and non-compliance with the law. The BBC says it's fully cooperating with any questions that the income tax has for it. However, what has happened has led to a furious political debate. The Congress is accusing the government of clamping down on free media. The Editors Guild and the Press Club of India have expressed similar concerns, but the BJP is hitting back. It is described The BJP, rather, is hitting back at the BBC, and it has described the BBC to be a brushed Bakwas corporation, in fact, even calling it the most corrupt organization in the world. The BBC is embroiled in several political controversies back home as well. But what is the politics behind this decision to send the tax agencies after the BBC? Is it really the letter and the spirit of the law, or is there something else at work? Most people will draw a connection between a BBC documentary seen to be critical of the Prime Minister and the BJP government and its role in 2002 and this decision to send the tax agencies after the BBC. But officials insist that, well, the law is simply be followed, and why should the BBC get any special exemptions? To decode the politics and the developments that have taken place, let's introduce our guests on the program today. Joining us on the program is Mr. Satish Jacob. He's one of India's best-known journalists. He was the BBC's Deputy Chief of Bureau for many, many years. It's a pleasure to see you on the program, sir. Also joining us from London today is Bharat Ramanan. He's an international affairs expert. When the BBC documentary aired, he wasn't a fan of the documentary, but nor was he a fan of the government's decision to block it. It's good to see you, Bharat. Ashwani Mahajan is with us. Ashwani Mahajan leads the Swadeshi Jagran Manch. Ashwani ji was again not a fan of the BBC documentary, but does he defend these tax rates? We'll ask him in a moment from now. Madhavan Narayanan, veteran journalist and editor commentator, is with us. Good to see you, Madhavan. Always, and also joining us is Mr. P.K. Jain. Mr. Jain, of course, has been a veteran Indian Police Service officer. Namaskar, Mr. Jain, and good to see all of you. Satish Jacob, I must start with you. The Congress is attacking the government, and the government is reminding the Congress of Indira Gandhi, who actually in 1970 moved to ban the BBC, ironically then too after a documentary, one of two, the first one being on the city of Kolkata. So there are many multiple ironies here. How do you see these tax raids, or what the income tax insists on calling a tax survey? Mr. Jacob.
Well, if I mean, law is for everybody. Everybody, we all have to follow law. And if the income tax officers are saying that the BJP, the British Broadcasting Corporation,
we're all mixing up our BBC with our BJP today.
Sorry,
I did it too.
yeah,
I did it
yeah,
too. Go
okay,
ahead, sir.
okay,
Go ahead.
but I mean, the tax evasion charge against the British Broadcasting Corporation, and they have offices in Delhi and Bombay, and the inspection is going on for the last 2 days. And we are told it will also go for another day tomorrow. And now what the tax officers are saying, that BBC is guilty of tax evasion and other things, and they say that they were contacted by the income tax authorities for several days, and BBC completely ignored their complaints. Now, we don't know what exactly they are looking for. The staff members of BBC, their computers have been taken away, their telephones have been away, they cannot get in touch with anybody. So they are completely isolated, and what they are going to find, that we don't know. But law is for everybody. And if BBC is guilty, and tax evasion, which surprises me because I worked for BBC for a number of years. And why I'm surprised is that BBC doesn't have any profit and loss basis. They don't sell anything. The money they spend on the expenses and staff salaries and all that comes from the license fees of radio and television, which the post office in England hands it over every year to BBC to run their expenses. They don't have any profit and loss. So what evasion they have taken, I don't know. Maybe it happened after I left, but I'm surprised that they are
Mr.
huge.
Jacob, if I may ask you, of course the law is for everybody, but the opposition has jumped on the timing and said it has something to do with the BBC documentary, which has been, of course, as you know, prevented from being shared online. In fact, emergency provisions of the Information Technology Act were invoked when the government decided to block this. Do you see a connection between the two developments, or do you think this might just be a coincidence, the timing?
Well, I don't want to make to put any blame on the government of India, but it is too much of a coincidence that it has happened soon after the controversy on the BBC documentary. Unfortunately for the Indian government, although they said that they had banned it, but for several days, many people saw the documentary in universities and other places. India is a huge country, so I don't think that too many people watched that, but some people did watch it. I did not. But I know one thing that BBC, whenever if they make a documentary or they make a radio series or television thing, I know one thing: the laws are the same for all producers and reporters. What they have, they always go for interviews with different people. If this documentary is on the riots in Ahmedabad and other places in Gujarat in 2002. So it's about 20 years ago. And there was too much of violence there. The violence sparked off by a compartment of the railways where some people were traveling from Ayodhya to
Yes.
Ahmedabad. The compartment caught fire and many people were killed. Now, there was a suspicion. We were told there was a suspicion that maybe the Muslims had set fire to the compartment. But there is no proof. The government has given no proof about that, how the fire took place. But immediately after the fire, the riots broke out in Gujarat
Yeah.
and they went on for nearly 6 weeks. And we were
Yes.
told by
And
the
yes, sorry, I'm interrupting you because, of course, a lot of this is well documented. The debate has raged on over who set fire to the Sabarmati Express, how did it catch fire. There were car civics coming back on that train. Then the riots followed. I think all of this is well documented in a sense. And then, of course, the Supreme Court finally exonerates the Prime Minister, and we have that happening as soon as recently as 2022. My question to Ashwani Mahajan, therefore, is this: people will draw a link, Ashwani ji, between the documentary and these tax rates, and in a week when India has made global headlines in two very important spaces, the relief work by the military in Turkey, and of course the big Tata Air India order, which has involved the French government and the US government, Boeing and Airbus. Why would the government want the foreign media to be focused on a free speech debate in India? How does this suit the government? Forget for a moment the principles and where we stand ideologically. How does this suit? How is this good politics according to you?
Uh, Barkha, you have answered my question yourself uh, by saying so, because India has always been following a very independent foreign policy, but the international, some international segment of the international press has and some agencies have always been after India, defaming India. Look at the report from the hunger index. Look at different kinds of reports coming in without reasons. They are putting Pakistan above us when Pakistan is facing food riots and other things. So this international, we always find this some agencies internationally, they can't digest the rising India, because we were the first ones to to give aid to our adversaries, and this kind of thing. And so far as the documentary is concerned, let me ask you one question. You had been saying so many things about the documentary. Already SIT during UPA government had said that there is no role of Modi in that, and then in Supreme Court this has been decided. Now after the investigating agencies have done their, after the Supreme Court has done their work, and now a documentary suddenly emerges. This is a separate story altogether. Now I'm coming to the income tax rates. Income tax surveys and other things, these are the routine matters, and everybody, even the corporates, even the pro government people or the anti government people, they keep facing these surveys. And if somebody starts saying that this is because of the political vendetta and other things, so I don't find any reason, because law has to do its
So
work.
you are saying
If
there's
there
no
are,
link between the documentary and the tax survey?
yeah, obviously there are so many tax surveys going on, thousands of them. Now if everybody starts saying that this is when they start playing the victim card, that is no good. This is what I feel.
Okay, so you're saying there's no reason to pay the victim card. These are two separate events. Enough has been said on the BBC documentary. Let's talk indeed about the tax rates. The opposition is not accepting this. Bharat, Ramanan, before I come to Mr. PK Jain and Madhavan, I want to just briefly get you, because you have a very interesting view. When the documentary came, you were not a fan of the documentary. You said this is the same old, same old. This is the Western media doing the stereotyping of India, where the Supreme Court has settled the matter. What is the reason for this documentary? But you didn't like, or you weren't a big fan of the government's decision to invoke the IT Act to block it online. Now come the tax service, right? Now come the tax service. How do you see this? As someone who does not like the documentary, who thought it was typical Western gaze on India, what do you say today, Bharat?
Thanks, Barkha, for having me. First off, obviously, I've expressed to you before as well that I'm not a supporter of limiting creative media freedoms, imposing bans, and such like. And so it's entirely incomprehensible to me as to why such an action would be taken, when I think the powers that be would know most certainly that it would invite the criticism that it has. And of course, the obvious conclusion that people are making, that this was some sort of vendetta against the BBC for what I'd like to call, hey, let me tell you what you already know documentary. So it's hard to avoid speculation, but it's possible, I think, to suggest a few things. One, that the government genuinely believes that it has a case here, and it's merely exercising its authority under the laws of the land. The IT department calls this a survey versus a search, which under Section 132 of the IT Act, these definitions they put out, they don't really make a big difference to the world outside, because outside people are looking at this as an act of aggression. The government, for itself, in realpolitik terms, has perhaps correctly calculated that this action may not have a huge bearing on India-UK bilateral relations. And also, let's not forget that this is happening in the context of a very hard negotiated FTA agreement between both those countries. The BBC, funnily, which has been known in the past to lash out at such actions by governments, has basically said that it's cooperating, while the US and the UK have both said absolutely nothing except to say that the monitoring the situation. So, make of this what you will. To me, it just seems completely insane that they would do something like this. But what I'm more worried about, Barkha, even if the authority that the government is exercising is well within the remit of the law, is how this is seen outside, the optics of something like this. For a country like ours, which is engaging with the world on equal terms, this does seem like a bit of a setback.
Let me be provocative here, and Madhavan will take this because I want to come to Mr. Jain on the point of law. It strikes me that the government, because this government doesn't do anything by accident, it's a politically very smart and astute party, and I think that the BJP may have calculated that there will be little public sympathy, mass sympathy for the BBC, that it's quite easy to whip up a popular sentiment against a what can be described as a biased in-court Western media. Indira Gandhi has done this before in 1970, as I was saying to Mr. Satish Jacob. And at that time too, there was a documentary on Kolkata that was described by 41 Congress MPs who petitioned Indira Gandhi for the ban as being anti-India. Very much the same language the BJP is using today for the documentary. So politics moves in full circles, and I know Madhavan will pick that up. Mr. Jain, on a point of law, are the agencies being misused as the opposition is alleging? PK Jain, if we can unmute Mr. Jain, please. Sir, I think you're muted at your end, sir. Can you? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
No. Yeah, hi, Barkha. Thank you so much. See, the disadvantage of coming at number 4 or number 5 in the debate is that all the points that one wants to speak about have already been spoken. Now, the fact remains that BBC has not said a word about it. The government of UK has not said a word about it. They are simply monitoring the situation. And here we have a country in which this kind of an action is also debated upon, looked out upon, criticized, and things like that. See, agencies have taken their own course of action. They had issued a notice to the corporation. The corporation chose not to reply to it, and they have gone ahead with the survey. I don't find officially, administratively, anything wrong legally with this kind of an action. Perception may be what it is. Perception is also, why should BBC come out with this kind of a documentary 20 years after the incident had taken place, when every other agency has probably exonerated the BJP or the current Prime Minister? So there was no reason. Now, see, we are not talking of coincidences. We are talking of hard facts. There's legally nothing wrong, and nothing stops the income tax authorities to go into the details of the financial transactions of this corporation, because it is based in India. It is getting money from abroad. What kind of money it is getting, what kind of money is being spent, where the money is going, everything can be looked into by the tax authorities. You see, one of the gentlemen earlier had said that it does not make any money. In today's days, when information is saleable, I doubt very much whether BBC would not be making any money out of it. They would be getting some money. So the IT is within their rights to look into these affairs. So I don't find any linkage. If at all there is any, it does not seem, it is not made out by the corporation.
So legally in the clear, perception is a different matter. Madhavan,
That's right.
I must take that. Okay, Madhavan, come on in. Do you think the BJP has actually calculated that this could work to its advantage? Let's not forget that many people have said that if there's one politician that the Prime Minister has often been drawn in parallel comparisons to, it is Indira Gandhi. I'm not sure he would see it that way, but many commentators have said that, and today the BJP is quoting Indira to the Congress. It's a very interesting situation. Madhavan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, Barkha, let us be very clear. As journalists, we are not supposed to take things...
Just hold up your mic a bit, Madhavan. Hold up your mic a bit.
Yeah. I think as journalists, we cannot take things purely at face value. We have to look at the context in which things happen and the number of incidents that might bring up sufficient data for us to arrive at a conclusion. The simple fact is that the IT department, the CBI and the ED have been quite overactive relating to institutions or individuals that have in some way or the other connected with criticism or opposition to the government. So it would be natural for people to have an impression that there has been a weaponization of civil service departments by this government. And to the extent that the BJP can call BBC as the most corrupt organization, the same thing can occur from the other side also, whether there has been an abuse of power or not. Now, this is not new to India because, as you are right, Indira Gandhi did that with the BBC. Lee Kuan Yew has done it with CNN in Singapore. Now, I want to make an interesting observation that Russia, China, and Turkey have been at the forefront of a nationalist resurgence worldwide, where you're looking at anything Western as having a colonial aim. Whereas the fact is that some of the institutions, such as the separation of judiciary, legislature, and executive, or the rise of the media, news media as a fourth estate, are also Western imports. To equate that with colonialism is something of a very strong systematic...
But maybe the BJP thinks it's working for it politically. Maybe the BJP has calculated that there is no mass outrage. It is journalists who are objecting, it is journalists who are criticizing, and journalists are no longer able to rally public opinion. The BJP has often made that point about the media, or the liberal media at least.
I have called it the triumph of nationalism over journalism. This is something uh, happening, whether we like it or not. It is a fact because the nationalist sentiments have been whipped up to a point where constitutional values are being
Okay.
questioned, undermined, and so let me say one thing, Barkha, before I leave it to the others. uh, Raids by the income tax as enforcement of law are legitimate or legal, but there has to be a sense of proportion and there has to be a prima facie evidence to suggest how it can go on for 2 days and involve the laptops and phones of news gathering staff who may have nothing to
I
do
think
with
that's a
fund
good point. I think that's a good
and
point, and I'll
to
put it to
that
Mr. Jain
extent,
in a moment.
the
Yeah.
question is, are sources and documents confidential to three fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution: right to privacy, right to practice in any profession, and right to freedom of expression. Are all three are potentially being challenged where there is a potential weaponization. See, the onus is on the government. If it is on the
Yes.
onus is on the BBC to prove that it has violated no income tax law, and the onus is on the government to prove that it had sufficient evidence. If nothing comes out of this, then it would be
Yeah.
perceived as a
I think that's a
political
fair. I think
symbol.
that's a very fair point. That the BBC, of course, has to prove that it's law compliant, but the government or the agencies must take the public into confidence and explain what is exactly going on here. Now, before I come to Mr. Satish Jacob, to Ashwani Mahajan, I have a political question. I find it very interesting that the BJP's press conference quoted Indira Gandhi's ban of 1970 when 41 Congress MPs had petitioned Mrs. Gandhi to actually ban the BBC, and she announced that it was a 2-year ban. So this is, the BJP में well turned around से भाई हमने तो ban भी नहीं किया, हमने तो BBC के दफ्तर भी नहीं बंद किए, हम तो सिर्फ tax survey कर रहे हैं. But Ashwini ji, Indira Gandhi is the same prime minister who imposed the emergency, against whom so many of your fellow ideologues went to jail. Surely the BJP and the RSS and the Sangh Parivar does not want to be like Indira Gandhi. ये इंदिरा गांधी को संघ परिवार क्यों कोट कर रहा है so admiringly? Ashwini ji.
You see, as Madhavan ji was making this point, that triumph of nationalism over the journalism. In fact, it requires a heart searching for the journalists also. If they are taking sides, then obviously there are issues involved. Your Coming to your question, uh, what I feel is that uh, uh, I am no spokesperson of the government or the BJP or for even Sangha Parivar. But so far as my thinking goes, uh, what uh, uh, what is being said from the other side is that what right uh, the Congress has got to criticize the action of the government when they are making just income tax surveys, not even rates. When your government, which you have had been, if they say okay, we don't support Indira Gandhi, we don't admire her, that was a black period, and so on. But if they agree that yes, Indira Gandhi was a great leader, and what right they've got to criticize the government for making these rates, which are well within the rights of the, and obviously
Yeah.
I do find rates coming in for several people, including the people in the government, outside the government, and several corporates, and nobody raises voice. Now, no, why, and these media houses are no holy cows. If suppose next day some other media houses, offices are surveyed, that they are not holy cows. In fact,
Yeah.
everybody is equal before the law, and therefore we should not make any case or any
Yeah.
any
So you're saying the Congress doesn't have a leg to stand on given its own history. Mr. Jacob, would you like to come in on that? Politics usually, turns full circle. And we are seeing that take place today. For the Congress, the shoe is on the other foot. At that time, Mr. Advani was among those who sort of rallied in favor of the BBC. Today, the BJP is on the other side. This happens. Yeah, it's called Rajniti. How do you see the parallels that are being drawn with Indira Gandhi? You know, I had to read up. I didn't know that Indira Gandhi, I didn't know the story of this BBC documentary. So I doubt many people today remembered that Mrs. Gandhi had done this. Mr. Jacob.
Well, Mrs. Gandhi did impose emergency, and in the emergency, BBC was one of the agencies, news agencies, which was quite badly affected. Our offices were closed down for 8 or 9 months. Mark Tully had to pack up his bags, and he went back to London, and we shut the office completely. When the emergency was lifted, Mark Tully came back and we reopened the office in Claridge's Hotel because we didn't have an office then. But I would like to tell all of us, we are here, that for the last 2 days the income tax survey is going on. BBC has instructed the staff members of their organization in Delhi, and they have told them that you must fully cooperate with the income tax authorities, and whatever they ask you, give freely all the answers. So there is an instruction from London to the staff here to fully cooperate with
Yes.
the income tax authorities. So
Did you find, Mr. Jacob, sorry, I want to ask you one other question before I go to Bharat. Do you find the BBC's response quite mild, muted? What did you make of the BBC's very cryptic? All the BBC has said is, please cooperate. That's all we know. The BBC hasn't called this an assault on the media, an assault on free speech. The BBC has not said this. Many people have said it on their behalf.
I'm glad you asked that question. My answer is that BBC knows that they're cool about it, and they know they will not find anything. I know it.
Okay.
Because it is not a commercial organization. We are not here to make profits.
Well, Mr. Jain is not convinced of that, but more on that later. Bharat, from perched in London, the silence of the UK government. I'll tell you one thing. There's one theory I hear all the time, that the emergence of India on the global stage, there are people who believe that there's a kind of orchestrated calumny. They've asked again and again, why is the BBC documentary now? But I don't know. I just think the BJP is a politically astute party. I continue to believe that somewhere they've calculated that these raids will have no cost. These raids will have no cost. We can principally keep debating the free speech debate, but perhaps that's their thinking. What's the view from London?
But I think I think you've said that partially yourself. I think I don't think there's been an active comment on the issue from the British government at any rate, and I doubt that you'll find something of much import either, unless, of course, this issue starts to spiral into something very, very serious. At this point in time, it's still a very much an initial survey, and if you look at the definition, it's quite interesting. But to the larger world, and that's the optics of this entire situation, is what does that mean for folks like ourselves? Folks like many of our artists and cultural icons who are engaging with the larger world about India's soft power, which has been growing. That's what I worry about a bit more, because the British government on that front will pretty much have to say very little.
Yeah, and of course, again, I want to emphasize to you, Madhavan, before I come to Mr. Jain on a point of law, this has been a week of very interesting global headlines for India. Turkey, Macron, Biden talking about how an Indian company's purchase is going to create 1 million jobs for Americans. And then now the BBC headline. Are these seemingly a set of contradictory headlines, or is this all part of, in a way, India saying we want to be looked at differently and we are going to participate in how those terms are set?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Barkha, because I want to say something nuanced on this. See, the nationalist mindset worldwide, I'm talking about the cultural right everywhere, likes to believe that strength respects strength and business and power are more important than the nuances of liberal democracy. This is something common to Russia, China, Turkey, and even the American right. So, under Modi, India's economy is doing well thanks to decades of groundwork laid down earlier and an emerging population of educated people and a big market. And therefore, the Modi government knows where its economic strengths lie and hopes that it's the G20 presidency and the economic strength will together make India look strong in the world's eye without having to worry about what they think of us in terms of certain democratic nuances of a liberal kind. So what is happening is that that's why Donald Trump had a very good relationship with Modi, even though Trump is highly discredited in the US itself. So the nationalist mindset equates governments and leaders with governments and ruling parties with the nation itself. They do not understand that nations are forever in flux.
I mean, they do
That's
not
a
understand that the
democratic
state
thought
and the
process.
government is not the same. The state, the Indian state and the government, you're
Exactly.
saying, is not the same. But the nationalist narrative does not see it like that. And the nationalist narrative politically, I'm not right now talking on principle or ideology. It works, or it has worked mostly for the BJP. Madhavan, would you agree?
Yes, it has worked because it's very important to understand. I wish we could have a separate conversation on this because I've gone deep into this subject from the point of view of even how the human brain works. You have to understand that visual imagery and rhetoric and certain grandstanding has a huge appeal worldwide to certain sections, particularly of the working class, and that can be very cleverly used by politicians. We have seen it happen in the former Yugoslavia, we have seen it happen in Turkey, and so there is a certain, I won't call it charisma, I would call it there is a demagogic appeal, and
But
that is
but the
working certainly for BJP.
but
Sorry.
maybe domestically. But I want to ask Mr. Jain, since Mr. Jain said in going by the law, the action is clear. Perception is a different thing. India's, the president holds the presidency of the G20. You can't call yourself the mother of democracy and have some essential democratic values questioned by the international media and by many journalists at home. Mr. Jain, please unmute yourself, sir. You're muted. Please, before you respond, please unmute yourself and do respond. Is there a gap between the assertions of being the mother of democracy, this country where elections, month after month, some would feel are held and held peacefully? The transfer of power is very smooth. It's very seamless by and large. But on the other hand, a free press is an essential value of a democracy. And many would say that is being weakened here because we don't have enough information. As Madhavan said, we don't have enough information on what exactly the BBC is being accused of.
See, precisely the same reason I would say, why should the government or the income tax agency be accused? Today, we have no information. No information has been doled out either by the agency or by the government. Mr. Anurag Thakur has said certainly that whatever would come out of these surveys would be put in the public domain in due course of time. So why make such a hullabaloo? I mean, we cannot gauge the concept of mother of democracy is only by one or two incidents. I mean, this agency has been surveyed, is being surveyed. So let the results come out and then we will decide as to whether the income tax was right or not, whether they took their action. It is only in hindsight that the correctness of the action of the income tax would be judged. Today, when the surveys are going on, when the information is still being collated, I don't know what exactly have they got. I don't know what exactly have they not got.
None of us do. None of us do.
That's right. So precisely.
The timing is raising eyebrows, sir. The timing is raising eyebrows.
Timing, Barkha, as I said, timing of the BBC documentary also could be questioned. Why after 20 years when all other agencies have exonerated the government and the individuals concerned? So timing could be, we could keep on debating this matter endlessly. I mean, it's a question of the perception being created against BBC. Okay. It's a question of perception, and the agency itself is not saying anything. The government of UK, yesterday I was listening to one of the MPs from UK. He said it's a private Mr. Blackman. Yeah. Yes, he said it's a private organization. It's an independent organization. So the government doesn't have to say anything on this. They are simply watching the situation. So why should we take a stand that BBC is being victimized?
This is a good question by Mr. Jain. Madhavan, very briefly, I need to give the last words to Mr. Jacob and Ashwani. Why, if the BBC is not cribbing so far, why is everyone else? Is the question Mr. Jain is raising. Yes.
Yeah, I think I want to make two things. BBC is playing, after all, it comes from the same land that invented cricket. You have to play everything with a straight bat, even if you know that the bowler has a bouncer up his sleeve. That is cricket. Please understand, I'm talking deep philosophy. The other thing is that Indian Express was raided by the Income Tax Department when Mr. Arun Shourie was the executive editor, and when the Bofors exposés were on. I think the BJP at that time was on the side of Indian Express, even though there was no, it did not say let the Income Tax Department make its procedures. So, hum kare to leela, wo kare to character deela is a common political thing, whether it's done by the Congress or BJP. That is why the media is important. That is why news media is important. To equate a media organization with any Lalaji ki dukan is not on. We are special. We are the fourth estate. We are an institution. If you don't treat us like an institution, BBC will be quiet. The world will be watching.
Okay, Mr. Jacob, before I give Ashwani Mahajan the last word, how do you see this unfolding in the next few days and weeks?
I think in a day or two we will know what was discovered by the income tax. Even whatever it is discovered, it has nothing to do with the debate we are having. Why BBC showed this documentary? The thing is that unfortunately not too many people have seen it. My feeling is that those people who are not very acquainted with journalism say why there should be a documentary after 20 years. The documentary is not a present day politics in India. It is a thing what happened in 2002. At that time, Narendra Modi was not the Prime Minister. He was the Chief Minister. And the BBC is not questioning Modi, that what Modi did or not. It is a simple documentary, and in documentary, they have not drawn any conclusion on anyone.
Okay, since none of us have seen the documentary, I don't know if Bharat has. I think Bharat has seen part one of it at least. That's what he said. Ashwani Mahajan, the last word to you is this. We don't want to be like China. We are not the country. And I know you have very strong feelings on China. And that is why I bring up this example. What distinguishes us from China, many things do, but it is our democracy. It is that we can still have a raucous debate over whether the BBC should have been raided or not. That what separates us should never diminish. That is what makes things also. So Ashwani ji, do you think at least the tax agencies must come out and issue some public statement on why they've done what they've done and what they found at the end of it?
First of all, let me tell you that India doesn't need anybody's certificate whether it is a robust democracy or not. We are a great democracy, and we have shown to the world that yes. Look at other countries. We have seen even US, the kind of democracy they have shown, the kind of election system they have depicted. So we have seen all the examples, and therefore nobody can summons us what democracy is. Secondly, about the freedom of press, India has got enough freedom of press, and you as journalists know it very well that there is no restriction on the freedom of the press. Yes, if some journalists are losing importance because of taking sides, and people don't like it, so we can't do anything about it. About the Indian Income Tax Department issuing a statement, obviously in due course of time they will have to, because we have a robust institutions, whether it is income tax or it is other institutions working in this country. We are run by the Constitution of India. We have robust institutions, robust judiciary, robust politics, robust democracy. Thank you.
Okay, we leave it there with those are the pictures you're seeing of more crew outside the BBC, the tax officers are of course inside. But long may we be argumentative Indians. If we agreed on everything, how boring our lives would be, how boring our argumentative country will be. We'll have a separate debate, Ashwani ji, one day on media and where Indian media is. But for now, thanking all of you, and to our audience, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.